Hello, I'm Jerry Fort. Welcome to Jungle Jerry's Treehouse. Want to finish this? See if Jack and Annie get swept up off their feet by this tornado. This is Magic Treehouse number 23, Twister on Tuesday by Mary Pope Osborne. All right. Chapter 6, Grasshopper Attack. What do you think that's about? Inside the lamp-lit hut, it was dry and cozy. Jack sat back on his bench. He didn't dare look at Jeb. "It's time for our writing lesson now," Miss Neely said. "I'm going to give you each a slate and a pen." She handed out the slates. They looked like small blackboard sets in wooden frames. Next, she gave everyone a slate pen. Each pen was a thin piece of chalk. Miss Neely opened the McGuffey reader. "While you were eating your noon meal, I copied a poem from the book," she said. "Now I want you to copy it." Miss Neely held her own slate board up for them all to see. "'Tis a lesson you should need. Try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again." Made my ear itch. I don't know why. It looks like an H. It might be an N. Let me read it again. "'Tis a lesson you should need. Try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again." In other words, don't give up. You just keep on trying to learn, I guess. That's what she's saying. Jack quickly started copying the words. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Jeb writing very slowly. It took the older boy a long time just to write the letter T. Jack slowed down too. He didn't want Jeb to think he was showing off. Suddenly, loud thumping sounds. Let's see that first. Loud thumping sounds came from overhead. It sounded as if someone were throwing stones against the roof. "Oh no! Grasshopper attack!" screamed Kate. She covered her head. "Grasshopper attack! Grasshopper attack!" cried Will. He covered his head too. "Be calm, everyone," said Miss Neely. "What's a grasshopper attack? What are they talking about?" Jack wondered. I guess he was just wondering, so he wasn't really actually screaming that, but even Jeb seemed worried. As Miss Neely started toward the door, he said, "Don't open it. They'll come in." Has everyone gone crazy? Jack thought. How can grasshoppers hurt anyone? Miss Neely opened the door and looked out. A moment later, she stuck her head back in and closed the door. "It's all right," she said. "It's only hailstones." "What's that?" said Annie. "Hailstones are small pieces of frozen rain. Sometimes they fall to earth during a thunderstorm," said Miss Neely. "Why did Will and Kate yell, 'Grasshopper attack'?" Jack asked. "Because last spring, grasshoppers did attack us," said Miss Neely. "Yes, millions and millions of them came out of the sky," said Will. "It looked like a huge, shiny cloud. They covered every inch of the ground," said Kate. "They ate everything." They ate all our crops," said Will. "Our turnips and fruit trees and watermelons. They even ate our clothes and bed sheets," said Kate. "Yuck," said Annie. "Oh man," said Jack. He'd never heard of a grasshopper attack before. "It was very scary," said Kate. But remember how we replanted and everyone helped everyone else? Said Miss Neely. Kate and Will nodded. We must try to hold on to the good memories, Miss Neely said gently, and let go of the bad ones. Yes, ma'am, said Kate. Everyone was quiet for a moment. Then the sound of the hailstones died away. Let's go back to our lesson now, said Miss Neely. They all returned to their writing. Even working as slowly as they could, Jack finished first. He showed his copy of the poem to Miss Neely. Good work, Jack, she said. We can all learn from these words, can't we? Yes, ma'am, said Jack. Hey, this is it, Jack, Annie blurted out. Something to learn. Miss Neely looked puzzled. But Jack smiled. He knew what Annie was talking about. They had their special writing. They could go home now. Jack stood up. Excuse me, ma'am, but I'm afraid we have to leave, he said. So soon? Said Miss Neely. Yes, we have to go back to our parents, said Annie. May I take my slate with us? Jack asked. Please do, said Miss Neely. Use it on your trip to California to practice your writing. Thanks, said Jack with a big smile. He put the slate in his leather bag. We learned a lot, ma'am. I'm glad you had a chance to come to school, said Miss Neely. Goodbye and good luck. Good luck to you too, said Annie. Bye, Will and Kate. Oh, bye, Will and Kate called out. Bye, said Jack and Annie. As they went out the door, Jack glanced at Jeb. He felt sorry for the older boy. He tried one last time to be friends. Bye, Jeb, he said, but the boy wouldn't even look at him. Jack gently closed the door to the schoolhouse. He breathed a sigh of relief. He was glad to get away from Jeb's anger. That's weird, said Annie. Look at the sky. As Jack turned away from the schoolhouse door, he caught his breath. The sky did look weird. Really weird. Chapter 7. Excuse me. Twister. The black clouds had taken on an odd greenish color. They all seemed to be going in different directions. Do you think it's a grasshopper attack? Annie asked nervously. Excuse me. Some of my lunch is stuck in my teeth. No, I think it's some more weird weather, like that hailstorm, said Jack. Let's go before it gets worse. As they started back to the treehouse, the wind picked up. Jack and Annie looked over their shoulders. The greenish clouds had dipped down close to the prairie. I feel like something awful is about to happen, said Annie. Hurry, said Jack. Run! He and Annie started running through the grass. When they got to the ladder of the treehouse, they looked back. In the distance, twisting black clouds had dropped out of the storm clouds. They swirled into a funnel shape. The dark funnel started twisting across the prairie. Jack's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. It's a twister, he said. Oh no, cried Annie. The twister was whirling and tearing across the grass. Man, that looks scary. Let's get out of here, said Jack. He grabbed the rope ladder and started up. Wait, said Annie. We have to help Miss Neely and the other kids. They have a storm cellar, Jack said. That's what our book said. Yeah, but it's only their first day in the dugout. They might not know about it, said Annie. There was a rug on the floor. Annie is right, Jack thought. He looked up at the treehouse. All they had to do was climb up and leave, and they'd be safe. But what about Miss Neely? What about Will and Kate and Jeb? Okay, said Jack. He jumped down from the ladder. Let's go back. He and Annie started running back toward the schoolhouse. They ran as fast as they could across the prairie. The roaring sound of the twister followed them. Suddenly, the wind threw them to the ground. Jack clutched the tall grass, trying to stand. When he got up, he grabbed Annie's hand. He pulled her up, too. With all his might, Jack held on to Annie and pulled her along. The roaring twister came closer and closer. The wind ripped up grass and earth around them. The roar grew deafening. Jack and Annie could barely stay on their feet. Finally, they reached the dugout. They tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. She might have locked the door from inside. They banged on the door with their fists. "Let us in," Annie shouted. No one opened the door. "They can't hear us," yelled Jack, but the sound of the twister drowned out his voice. Chapter 8. Get below! Suddenly, the schoolhouse door blew off its hinges. It went flying through the air. Jack grabbed Annie and pulled her into the dugout. Inside, the benches were overturned. The room was a mess. Miss Neely and the three kids were pressed against the dirt wall. Kate and Will screamed as the winds whipped around the room. Miss Neely hugged Kate. Jeb held on to Will. "Get in the cellar," Jack yelled. "What cellar?" shouted Miss Neely. Together, Jack and Annie pulled the rug off the floor and uncovered the cellar door. They didn't even know there was a cellar down in there. They grabbed the door and tried to open it, but the wind was blowing too hard. Suddenly, Jeb was beside them. He pulled the door open. A ladder led down into the cellar. One by one, Will, Kate, Miss Neely, and Annie went down that ladder. Jack waited for Jeb to go down. "Go, go!" Jeb shouted. Jack climbed down into the cellar. Pretty scary. Jeb came last. He closed the door behind him, leaving everyone in total darkness. The twister roared furiously above them. It sounded like a train barreling right through the schoolhouse. As the twister roared and howled, Jack couldn't think. He couldn't feel. He was totally swept up in the howl of the wind. Then, just as Jack felt he would disappear in the roar of the twister, the noise died down, and then it was silent. No one spoke for a moment in the blackness. Then Annie broke the silence. "Are we still alive?" she whispered. Everyone laughed. "Yes, I think we are," said Miss Neely. Chapter 9. All clear. Jeb pushed open the cellar door. Daylight streamed in. He looked out. "All clear," he said. Jeb crawled out of the cellar. Jack followed him, then Annie, Will, Kate, and Miss Neely. The sky was gray above them. The twister had torn the roof off the dugout. It sucked everything out, even the rug. They all stared in shock at the empty space. Then Miss Neely smiled. "Well, at least we are all safe," she said. They stepped out of the hut. The air was thick with dust and bits of grass. The twister had cut a wide path of dirt and destruction across the prairie. It was still whirling away in the horizon. Everyone watched silently as the twister became long and thin, like a piece of rope. Then it vanished completely. Miss Neely turned to Jack and Annie. "You saved our lives," she said. "Thank you," said Will. "Thank you," said Kate, hugging Annie. Jeb actually opened the cellar door. Jeb actually opened the cellar door, said Jack. "Yes, thank you too, Jeb," said Miss Neely. Jack wasn't proud to take all the credit for himself. He wanted to make sure that she knew Jeb was actually the one that opened the door. "How did you know about that cellar?" Jeb said. Jack pulled their research book out of his leather bag. "We read about it in this book," he said. Jeb stared at the book. Then he sighed. "I aim to read someday, too," he said. "That looks like a good book." Jack didn't know what to say. He was still afraid of making Jeb mad, so he just nodded. "My ma and pa were too poor to go to school," said Jeb. "They want me to go, but I'm getting started mighty late." "It's not too late," said Jack. "It's never too late," said Annie. Jeb narrowed his eyes. "If you ever come back through here," he said. "Yes?" Jack asked carefully. Was Jeb about to threaten him again? Maybe I'll be able to read that book of yours, Jeb said. Jack sighed and smiled. I know you will, he said. Jeb smiled back. He had a nice smile. Thanks for coming back to rescue us, he said to both Jack and Annie. Too bad you can't stay. I reckon we'd all be good friends if you did. I reckon we would, said Annie. Jeb nodded. Then he turned and ran back to join the others. Suddenly the sun broke through the clouds. The wildflowers danced in a gentle breeze. Ready? Said Annie. Jack just stood there, staring at the sunlit prairie. Jack, ready to go? Annie asked. In that moment, Jack actually hated to leave, but he nodded slowly and said, Let's go. He and Annie took off through the bright, sparkling grass. They ran to the small grove of trees near the creek. They climbed up the rope ladder and scrambled into the treehouse. Annie picked up their Pennsylvania book and says, I wish we could go there, she said. This time the wind did not start to blow. What? Wait a minute. Did I read that right? This time the wind did not start to blow. The treehouse simply started to spin on its own. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. What was going on, I wonder? I don't understand that. Chapter 10, the third writing. That's the one they just got. Jack opened his eyes. Morning light filled the treehouse. He and Annie were wearing their own clothes again. Home, said Annie, smiling. Jack looked out the window. He saw their nice, cozy house in the distance, their lawn, their sidewalk, their paved street. Life here is pretty easy compared to the pioneer life, said Jack. Excuse me. We're lucky, said Annie. Jack reached into his bag and pulled out the small slate. Our third writing, he said. He added the poem to the list from the Civil War and the letter from the Revolutionary War. You did just what that poem says you should do, said Annie. What do you mean? Jack asked. If at first you don't succeed, try again, Annie said. You kept trying to make friends with Jeb. In the end, you did. He kept trying, didn't he? I guess you're right, said Jack. We have to get only one more special writing from Morgan's library, said Annie. I wonder how that will help save Camelot, said Jack. Annie shrugged. It's a mystery, she said. She and Jack looked around the treehouse. Look! Annie picked up a piece of paper lying in the corner. She read aloud, Come back early Wednesday morning. Wednesday? Man, that's tomorrow, said Jack. So, said Annie. She started down the rope ladder. Not much time to recover, said Jack, pulling on his backpack. Recover from what? Annie said. The twister, said Jack. Oh, yeah, I'd almost forgotten about that, said Annie. Jack smiled. Actually, the nightmare of the twister was fading from his memory, too. We must try to hold on to the good memories, Miss Neely had said. And actually, the nightmare of the twister was fading from his memory, too. Okay. We must try to hold on to the good memories, Miss Neely had said, and let go of the bad ones. The kindness of Will and Kate, making friends with Jeb, the courage of Miss Neely, these memories Jack thought he would never forget. Want to hear some more facts? More facts about twisters. Twisters, or tornadoes, are the fastest winds on Earth. Twisters can travel at the speeds up to 200 miles per hour. The spinning winds act like a giant vacuum, cleaner as they move across the Earth. Almost 1,000 tornadoes hit the United States each year. Wow, that's a lot. More facts about pioneer life on the prairie. From the mid-1800s through the 1880s, thousands of pioneers traveled by wagon across America. Most were headed for the territories of Oregon and California, but a number stopped. But a number, meaning, but a good amount of people also settled on the Kansas frontier. Stopped and settled on the Kansas frontier. They made dugouts and broke up the hard ground to plant crops. These pioneers faced windstorms and dust storms, a shortage of water, and grasshopper plagues. That's what they faced while living in those areas. In spite of the hardships, they set up small schools so their children could learn the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's good. Where did it go? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. Is that how you spell those? Children of varied ages often learned together. It was not unusual for teachers to be as young as 15 or 16 years old. You know, if you haven't seen this show yet, this is a show from back in the 70s. Actually, maybe in the late 60s to 70s. A show called Little House on the Prairie. Has a lot of good stars in there. It shows kind of that life, pioneer life. It shows a good example of a schoolhouse, and that many different ages of kids had to, they couldn't have like first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, high school, junior high, college, and all that. It was one class for all different ages of kids, and they had those slates. They used those slates to do a lot of their stuff on. They had a lot of young teachers too, so they faced a lot of hardships too. There was a lot of farmers back in them days. That was one of the main occupations. That was the main job. A lot of them, that's what they did. Some were there were different occupations. There was different, oh shoot, what is it? I just lost it. Men that were familiar with metalworks, doing horseshoes for the horses, the forging. They're called something, I just can't remember. But anyway, yeah, watch Little House on the Prairie. It's a good show, and there's a pretty good amount of seasons to it, and it's just a good experience for especially younger people. So and older people too. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a really good show. So check it out. We have all the seasons of it. I used to watch it when I was a kid. My folks watched it, and yeah, it's really good, and it teaches you things too. It's like a educational show. So check it out for yourself. Little House on the Prairie. Excuse me. From the mid-1800s through the 1880s, thousands of pioneers traveled by wagon across America. I already read this. When Doug broke up shortage, water, plagues. In spite of the hardships, they set up small schools so their children could learn the 3 R's. Varied ages often learn together. That's what I was saying. Children of varied ages often learn together. It was not unusual for teachers to be as young as 15 or 16 years old. That's really young, isn't it? More facts about pioneer school books. The most popular American school books of the 1880s were called McGuffey Readers. They were put together by a school teacher from Ohio named William Holmes McGuffey. Poems such as Mary Had a Little Lamb, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and If at First You Don't Succeed become part of American life because they were in the McGuffey Readers. let me rewind. Mary had a little lamb, twinkle, twinkle, little star. And if at first you don't succeed, is that the name of a book? I guess that's the name of a book. If at first you don't succeed. Became part of American life because they were in the McGuffey readers, I guess. Okay. Webster's spelling book was another significant reference in early American schools. It taught people who'd come here from all over the world how to spell words in the English language. That was it. There you go. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Let's see what our next one is. That was number 23. Number 24 is about an earthquake. Have you ever felt an earthquake? Here in Oklahoma, we felt tremors, just a little shaking, not a whole lot, but it comes from from other places that is actually having bigger earthquakes. I guess it's just like a seismic, I think they call it, tremor that you feel. But yeah, earthquake in the early morning. Mary Pope Osborne. That'll be interesting. Looks kind of scary, doesn't it? Look at the ground opening up. Ooh. Wow. Okay. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next one.